is back to decimate your enemies and your wallet alike. And today I'm going to show you how to build her best. The Golden True is still the pick for support Furina, and of course a bunch of other units like Fischl, Chiori and Yaimiko. The list is pretty long, and of course there is no True without the Hunter set, which pretty much anybody in their grandma can run. And it also happens to be good for C6 Furina. Not as good as True, but you know, paid good cash to make it playable. As for two pieces, you can just combine any spare HP, ER or 8M pieces depending on what you need. AM of course only if you're on vaporized teams. Furina's energy cost is medium but certainly not premium. It's 60, which doesn't sound too bad, but you would be off the mark if you think it's no problem. Lady Furina is an off-fielder, means she gets only crumbs of energy particles to eat, and B, she's often the solo hydro in a lot of teams, and C, some guys just bust out the damage a little too quickly, leaving Furina not enough time to get her fill. Alright, now how does it look now for her popular teams like Nuvolet in Linne for example, or stuff like Navia Plant, Shoutout, Double, Hydro, etc. pp. You can see clearly here now how far things can go apart. The cheapest you can ever get away is with Raiden Double Hydro at a low rate of only 105% ER. Not a big surprise, but if you look at Linne, if you dare to do that, it can get nuclear docked very quickly at a staggering 220 to 230%. Your crit rolls will be on a hamstring budget, I can tell you that. I mean, the rule is very simple. If you can run double hydro, you will rarely need above 140% except Shoutout. Sadly, once you go single hydro, you will come in a world of pain, especially in vape, where you end up with 200% plus ER like Linne, which really sucks. In such a team, go at the very least 180 ER. At this point, you really need to suck it up and put a Favonius on her. Just get over with it. At C0, support is her core role after all, so sorry but I didn't make the rules. Now, Furina wants a lot of stats, because she is the center of all the attention. But how do you juggle them best? Let's start with the timepiece. If you have enough ER, you go HP percent, especially if you have an ER weapon. If you don't have an ER weapon, you must go ER percent. You don't get to have a choice here. So, in terms of gauntlets, HP will be the better choice. It actually outperforms damage percent and remains the best choice even with Constellations. As for a crown, HP percent will be more viable at C0, and you can get away with that just fine if you want to get her online quick and dirty. But a high investment crit build will also yield decent results and certainly will do better with cons. So a low investment build is just triple HP, assuming you have an energy weapon like Favonius, but a refined build with her signature would go with ER HP crit rate, for example. For her substats, prioritize ER percent for the specific teams I mentioned before until you have hit the breakpoints. Then you go either into crit and then HP percent, some EM here and there for a DPS build that involves vaporize, or just stick ER and HP for the dirt cheap build. Furina already had plenty of weapons to choose from when she got introduced. Now there are just more of them. But are there any major upcomers? So for starters, Splendor of course remains a killer weapon and her best in slot as signature. The only problem remains that it doesn't really help with energy, but it certainly makes up for it in the drip department. The Primordial J Cutter is 100% still her best budget damage option as long as you can bankroll the energy from somewhere. It's your best bang for buck option out there. The best 4 stars for support Furina are still Favonius and also of course the long forgotten Festering Desire. Both are great for energy demands, but Festering, for being a very old 4-star, is killing it at rank 5 in the DPS department, which makes it even more of a tragedy that you can't get it anymore. To all the fossils who are still listening, consider yourself lucky. Also, very notable mentions are the key of Kaj Nisud and Uraku Misugiri, with the key being a pretty good weapon, not just to make her more thick, but also to improve her vaporous damage. The Misugiri is also quite busted at rank 3 for a C0 weapon, and that is at its worst case, as you rarely will run double Geo to max its passive. It still gives her 24% skill damage to your Furina and comes with a chunky 88% crit damage. It almost mimics her signature weapon, so that's why it's so strong. Yeah, I know, cool stuff, but who is going to pull for that weapon extra just to put it on Furina? That's a whole nother discussion. Anyway, the Harbinger is mentioned here and it certainly can do damage, however the problem is staying above a 90% HP, so not a very reliable weapon. The Pipe is an okay weapon, it gives a lot of energy, not only with its secondary stat but also from the passive, which sadly doesn't tick for too long with 5 seconds and will leave you wanting. She could have really needed that as she wants to sip energy over a longer period of time, remember, of Fielder. So in short, it will be either Splendor, Jade Cutter, Festering, Pipe or the Favonius, where Jade Cutter is your best budget DPS option and Favonius the best support weapon. We all know Furina is pretty much plug and play. There are so many teams that fit with her, and since her inception, more have joined. But certainly some do way better with her than others. And some might have big PP numbers, but also big caveats to boots like Linne. And nowadays, it has come so far that Hoyoverse has to come up with anti-Furina characters like Arlecchino just to contain her power somewhat. But honestly, if you go sicko mode and are really adamant about that, you could still even play that. It's not impossible, just a little harder. You have to put in a bit more work. Let's start with Nuvolet. This man is packing, and he is the best character to use with Furina. He generates the most fanfare stacks out of any DPS. So even without a healer, you are absolutely covered. His AoE is absolutely incredible, which to this day is untouched. Yeah, not even Arlecchino can beat him in this department. And of course, both characters are Hydro HP, which has an amazing resonance effect. And now pair that with Kazuha, Charlotte or Zhongli and boom, it's perfect. Charlotte, of course, will generate tons of fanfare, while Mr. Zhongli will support with Archaic Patra and a fat res shred. Linne leaves Furina hanging dry in the ER department, but in terms of raw damage, that team is no chump. She really helps him sweep, even though the guy is meant to be mono pyro. I know, but he's also designed to be a nuke of some sort, one that strongly favors a good wape. Furina amps it up and also deals high personal damage. This is how Linne fights every single day for pyro supremacy against Arlecchino. But to be serious with you, I say this guy is still taking the crown. Next in line is plunge teams with Xianyun, particularly Mr. Diluc of the Rebellion, Xiao, Gaming and Navia. Again, it is not just damage bonus Furina provides, but unlike Yelan, Furina is not dependent on characters applying normals just to get her damage off, making her a premium support for these guys. For Diluc and Gaming, Bennett is definitely king, but Navia is better off with another Geo like Chiori or Zhongli. Now, speaking of Navia, this woman just cooks with Furina even without any plunges involved whatsoever. Just replace Xianyun with Bennett and you roll. You will trade some fanfare, but in return get massive nukes. And you also can play Navia with our good old maid Noelle. For the 4th slot, you can either add a Hydro like Yelan or Fisher. Now all of a sudden, you have here a team which can go off the rails while Noelle is just like, can I clear? like a true powerlifter she is. And then you get Navia doing the buckshots. Now, Double Hydro is a core that can literally carry everything on his back, even your chunky ass or DPS Chi-Chi. With Yelan and Xing Shou being like one of the top contenders for that. Then you add healers like Jean or Xiang Yun, and boom, perfect soup. The best on-fielders here in this constellation are Shoutout, Kokomi and Raiden. Personally, I'm a big simp of the Raiden variation as it is so smooth and elegant to play and you just decimate, especially when you already have some cons on her. Plus, I do like purple a lot. Shoutout is of course an extremely popular unit that just got better with the addition of Furina, and Double Hydro was already a strong core even before her. And with Kokomi, healing is now covered, which means you can bring in Kazuha, who also massively buffs up Furina and Yelan's damage. Recently, this guy is a little bit odd, as his damage was never crazy to begin with, but because of Furina, he got saved. He has now a Wave Melt team with Furina, Xiangling and Bennett. They just make it so that he can slack off in the DPS department and still look good. Just apply cryo and show cake, I guess. So let's talk about Furina's talents. For those who need a little refresher, Furina's normal attacks, unless you have her C6, are useless. Don't bother leveling them. Furina's elemental skill comes into different variants. One variant are the Salon members who will deal hydro damage, which is based on Furina's max HP. The other variant is a single hydro mimic type of animal who is stationary and heals you continuously. The Salon members will do the attacks automatically against nearby targets, and they will prioritize the target you are attacking. As long as you have any team members, anyone who's above 50% HP, the gang members will have their attack power increased based on the number of your team members they can drain for HP. For every team member where this is the case, they will deal 10% more damage for up to 40. The skill has an incredible 30-second duration on a 20-second cooldown, allowing you to walk on water forever without interruption, do damage or heal as much as you want. This is where all of Furina's personal damage is coming from. The hydro application is decent but inconsistent. That's why you need Yelan or Xingqiu for waves. So it's difficult to rely on her as a solo hydro applicator. Furina's burst is what makes her one of the best units in the entire game. It is a fully supportive ability that enhances the entire team's damage. It comes at a 60 energy cost on an 18-second cooldown, which is long enough for most rotations. This ability provides a ramping damage dealt and a healing bonus buff that will max out at 300 stacks. The way you gain stacks is due to a change of team members' HP. To max it out, you need 300 stacks. Each HP change will give you a fanfare stack, and at level 10 you will have a 75% damage bonus and a 30% healing bonus. Since this quacky girl is most of the time off field and is pretty often the solo hydro in the team, the 60 energy do tend to feel more costly. Furina's A1 will make Furina heal other party members. This happens whenever a party member who is healthy receives excess healing that is not from Furina herself. When this excess healing happens, that's when Furina comes into play and heals the other party members by 2% of the max HP once every 2 seconds for the next 4 seconds. So 2 times, okay? Now the A4 is a straight up buff to her hydro mimics. For every 1000 HP Furina possesses, it will apply the following effects. It will make your Salon members deal 28% more damage. And for the Singer of Many Waters, it will reduce the healing interval for nearby characters for up to 16%. Now, if you're wondering if you should go for Furina cons or her signature weapon, the answer is actually pretty straightforward. Until C3, her constellations are way better than going for a signature weapon. That's because all of these constellations straight up buff her burst. And buffing her burst means buffing the overall team's damage, which also of course includes her own damage. Even her constellation 4 could be considered better than going for a weapon, as that fixes her energy needs, which allows her to replace the ER Sands for an HP one. And if you own any good 5-star weapon like the Mist Splitter or the J Cutter, you're probably good just to sit on them until you have her cons. But who am I talking to? if you are getting so many constellations, it's borderline impossible that you're not getting her weapon. Just know that her constellations are just really good overall. Now that you know about how good they are, what exactly do they do for Furina in detail? C1 is massive already. When Furina pops her burst, she will gain 150 fanfare stacks right away, and the limit of the fanfare stacks will be raised by 100. Which means her damage bonus will now max at 100% instead of just 75% at C0, and her healing bonus will now cap at 40% instead of 30. Since that damage bonus is demied, that's quite a big buff. Her C2 is no less powerful. It will make her fanfare gains much faster, 2.5 times faster to be exact. It is a damage increase because now you will spend way more time at max stacks than before, meaning more peak damage. On top of every fanfare stack you gain, Furina's own max HP will also increase and will max out at 140% HP. So that means also more personal damage for her. Her C3 is luckily the upgrade that buffs her burst, so for anyone who is looking for a really good stopping point, you have found it in either C2 or C3. C4 is also far from useless as I mentioned before. It helps her to generate about 10 to 15 energy every rotation, making the need for an ER sense obsolete, so another damage increase. C5 is an increase for her skill, so it means more heals and damage from her Hydro Mimics. The C6 is again huge like for most characters, however in Furina's case it goes even further beyond, turning her into a whole different unit. One thing that I can note here right away is that it makes the Mahachao C Hunter set viable on her. I mean, you pay good money for that, as now once she pops her burst, all of a sudden she has turned herself into an on-fielder, dealing a ton of her damage now through normal attacks. So yes, you have to raise her normals now too. In short, Furina gains the center of attention, a buff effect for 10 seconds, and while it lasts, all her normal attacks, charge attacks and plunging attacks are converted into hydro damage, which cannot be overridden by any other elemental infusion. And the damage is also increased by an amount equivalent to 18% of Furina's max HP. And it just doesn't stop here with the weirdness. Her skill also now works fundamentally different. Now when her salon members are up, you will also get healed too, by an amount of 4% of Furina's max HP for every second for almost 3 seconds. The other effect when you have the singer out will have Furina's normal attacks, charge attacks or plunging attacks all deal extra damage based on 25% of Furina's max HP. With so much power comes of course a hefty price to pay. Not just money but also with your life. Or in fact not your life but your team's life, as any attack now will consume 1% of their max HP. Both of these variants need Furina to be on field and use her normals. And of course the effect is not infinite. The effect is capped at 6 applications. When we talk about the damage, the damage is quite huge she does in her damage mode, where you can like expect like 200, 300k per stab. It's crazy. All in all, Furina's cons are very powerful, and it's kinda similar to Raiden back then when she was the craze of the town. And with Furina, it's actually way more pronounced, as her cons heavily impact her team performance compared to Raiden, who boosts her own damage mostly. Yes, she has like her skill who amps up burst damage, but it's nowhere near comparable. Do you think Furina will decline similarly to Raiden, or will she remain at the top for the remainder of the 2 years of Genshin Impact? Let me know in the comments. This has been Neostar Impact, signing out.